Sick of the bickering? We've got the solution. Thoughtful talk about the issues that matter in our community. Fresh Take with Josh Duclos. Be a part of the show by calling 281-1150 or email freshtake1150@gmail.com. Now, from the Myron Construction Studio, here's Josh Duclos.
Good morning and welcome back to Fresh Take. I'm your host, Josh Duclos, and it's Monday morning. That means it's time to get up and at 'em and moving once again. I hope you got something great planned. Luckily, this Monday's a bit of cool down. Only a high in the mid-70s today, so something a little cooler than what we had at the end of last week. So enjoy that bit of relief because the 80s will be back very soon. This hour of Fresh Take is brought to you by Legal Business Edge. Call attorney Sarah DeBruin at 920-991-0404. Legal Business Edge, a practice for your purpose. So happy to have you with us this morning, and we've got Zach Morris with us, of course, working the boards. Good morning, Zach.
Good morning, Josh.
Happy Monday.
You as well.
Thank you so much. Carol Patrizzi with us from the WHBY News team. Good morning, Carol.
Good morning.
How was your weekend?
Great weekend.
Yeah?
Very nice.
Awesome. Glad to hear that. I know you were working hard last week with Mike away, and
Yep.
so it was nice sometimes to get a little chance to catch your breath and relax a little bit. We had 1.5 million live events in the weekend in the area this past weekend.
Is that all?
Yeah, I think that was about it. I only made it to a half to a quarter of them, but I hope whatever you were doing, you had fun. Carol, we're going to start with a serious story out of Ashwaubenon.
Yes.
News breaking early yesterday morning about an officer struck while attending to a car fire
Right.
alongside I-41.
Yes, right along Wabi Lane, standing outside of his car, hit by a suspected drunk driver. And so about right now, the Ashwaubenon Safety Department is planning to hold a press conference where they're going to talk about this, maybe update the situation, and hopefully it's good news for the officer that he's in better condition. But he has what we were told earlier was life-threatening injuries.
Yeah, taken to the hospital with those life-threatening injuries. And this was it early hours?
11 o'clock Saturday night.
Oh, so not even
11:30.
that late.
Yeah,
Okay.
11:30.
So just before midnight, basically.
Sure.
Oh, my goodness. Well,
It was dark,
Yeah.
but I'm sure he had flashers on, and you've got a car fire on the side of the road. So, I mean, there's a little brightness
yeah.
there.
One of the things I've noticed, and this happened to me yesterday, now this is the middle of the night, and so maybe this is a bit of a different situation, but there's certain scenarios on the highway where when it is dark
Yeah.
and the street lights are on,
Yes.
you get a certain glare, and at certain angles it's hard to see because the glare off the roads.
Sure.
Then you've got the car fire, and I'm sure there were multiple emergency vehicles with their flashing lights and things like that. I wonder if this was a case of where an officer was standing there, this person potentially looking at the accident, looking at lights, trying to look away, and who knows
Right,
what leads to
right,
these things.
right.
But I know that when you've got all those kinds of, those big situations, the side of a highway, you've got individuals, those officers who are responding, walking along the scene.
Right.
Obviously, this driver was in the wrong because, as they suspect, they were under the influence. And
Right.
and we'll have to wait and see for sure if that pans out. And as you said, the Ashwaubenon Public Safety having a press conference here right about now.
Yes.
To provide more of that information. But yesterday I was driving home and it was more twilight time, so the
Okay.
sun was just kind of setting. Maybe it was about 8:30 or so. And as I was coming, there was just a little bit of sun coming in over the trees.
Sure.
I was looking both directions, and the one place I did not look directly was right at the corner where there was a guy with his dog who luckily spotted me,
Yeah,
and he was
yeah.
waiting there until I went through the intersection.
Sure.
I didn't actually see him until I actually started moving again, because this is a yield.
Yes.
Okay, and so
Yes.
these are the ones where we don't always want to come to a full stop,
Right.
but I'm still trying to make sure I'm looking everywhere I'm supposed to
Sure.
look.
So you could stop for whoever needs to.
Right.
Yeah, right.
And I actually started rolling again before I noticed this man, and as soon as I did, I felt terrible, as I never actually saw him there.
Sure.
Luckily, he came to a stop, but I sort of signaled to him as I was rolling through, like, thank you, my bad, excuse me, you know,
right.
that hand raise that's sort of the,
Right.
the hey there, I see you, thank you.
Yeah.
Those kind of situations, given the lighting, given the timing. The other thing I've noticed is certain areas, again, in neighborhoods where people's landscaping, shrubbery, things like
Yes,
that is in position,
right.
blocking your view of things.
Right.
Obviously, this accident here on the side of 41 with the car fire and this officer from Ashwaubenon, it's not a neighborhood setting, right? This is the exact kind of opposite of that setting.
Correct, yeah.
Where theoretically everything is all lit up, you're seeing what you need to see. But when you are under the influence, even all of that doesn't guarantee you're going to make it safely through.
And you don't know how much traffic was there, of course, but we do have a law that you're supposed to move over to the left if you
Right.
see police on the right. And I would say there has been some times when the roads are so busy and that's coming up, you can't move
Yeah,
over.
yeah.
So, but you have to slow down.
And that,
that's
I think, is the
you-
key, right?
Yeah, you have to take the precaution that's like, okay, I'm going to cause an accident if I go to the left,
Right.
so I'm just going to slow down.
Yeah, and that's it. Every person, individual behind the wheel has to take responsibility for that.
Right.
Another sort of summertime story is, yes, we've had storms. That means now we've got, the Wisconsin state bird, mosquitoes. I'll tell you, when I was up north, not this past weekend, the
Yeah.
weekend before, I was spending some time playing some Frisbee. I think I kept
Sure.
my shorts on too long before
Yeah.
switching to pants.
Sure.
Oh my gosh, entire last week, I was just scratching and
Itching.
scratching and scratching. It's amazing just how quickly
Oh, yeah.
they can swarm, and I got bitten alive. It's crazy. And so this is not just me, huh? This is
No,
everyone.
no, this is everyone. And I'm one of those people that they just leech onto. I'm one of those people that are just attracted by them, to them, whatever.
Yeah, you got
So-
that sweet blood. That you
Yeah,
like,
I
right?
guess so. And what are the big, not mosquitoes, but they're kind of the bigger flies?
Like deer flies or horse
Is that
flies.
what they are?
Yeah.
Holy
Yeah.
smoke, I got bit. I was
Oh.
riding a bike on vacation, and somehow I wasn't going fast enough, and it bit me like right on the wrist, and it took over a week. It was like
Yeah.
that hurt.
Those horsefly bites are bad.
Yeah.
Those things are buggers, and they itch.
Oh,
and
yeah.
yeah. Now, people can do something about this mosquitoes outbreak, though. There's little ways they can at least try and help,
Sure.
which is to clear standing water in your yard. If you have little puddles that accumulate, take a broom,
Yeah.
sweep that water away.
Yeah.
Right, little things like that make a big difference because it is in those pockets of standing water where these mosquitoes lay their eggs and the next generation hatches.
Right.
So if you seem like you've got a lot more mosquitoes in your yard than you think you should, check for those little areas of standing water, and it doesn't take much. I mean, a teaspoon of
Sure,
standing water
yeah.
is plenty for them to lay those eggs.
Yeah, exactly. It's horrible. but the good news was he said that the drier climates actually have more of the mosquitoes with disease. So okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting. Okay, so we may have more mosquitoes. It's because of the wet conditions, but it's actually in those drier climates where they have the disease-bearing mosquitoes
Yes.
that we're more mindful of.
Right.
I don't know if that actually makes me feel better, but okay. All right. At least I know that while
Right.
I'm scratching, I'm not necessarily getting West Nile.
Right.
And
Well,
we did find birds infected with West Nile in Appleton and Grand Chute last week.
right. So
I'm
we do have
remembering.
West Nile here
Okay.
in Outagamie County,
Okay.
Outagamie and Brown, and they're still collecting birds from Winnebago and Calumet.
Okay. All right. Well, unfortunately, that's something else we just have to keep in
Yep.
mind these days is that West Nile threat as well.
I live in Winnebago, so I'm fine.
Yeah. No, Zach, you can be the explorer. You can be the one to discover the West
No,
Nile
hopefully not.
because you know that the crows do not observe those county boundaries, right?
Right,
That
right.
crow in South Appleton is coming your way next time, Zach. I'm telling you. Well, the last thing I want to talk about, in addition to EAA this week in the area, and the aviation buffs have been waiting for this for months, if not years. In addition to the EAA this week, it's Navy Week in Northeast Wisconsin. We're going to be joined in just a couple minutes by Lieutenant David Carter. I know he joined you guys at the AM Fox Valley show last week.
Yep.
So we're going to get him in here in just a couple of minutes to do a quick rundown of what's all going on, why they're doing Navy Week alongside EAA. It might seem like a weird time to pick to do that when there's already so much going on, but it does make sense. There is a connection there. We'll hear from Lieutenant David Carter, an Appleton native. Actually, I am friend with his sister through a mutual
Really?
friend. Yeah, so
You're
he
funny,
came
yeah.
a couple weeks ago. We were planning all this, and afterwards I get a text from this friend of mine who lives in Portland, and she's like, April said you met her brother. It's like,
Whoa.
well, hold on, I got to do the math on that
Right,
one.
right.
But yeah, he'll be here talking about some of the things you can expect and be a part of and see and do this week. I'll actually have some guests from the U.S. Navy on the show on Wednesday, and we'll be live streaming that hour. We're also live streaming today's show, where we'll have folks talking about downtown Menasha planning, and we'll talk about the state budget My current favorite topic.
boy, here
we'll
we
have
go again.
State Senator
Yeah.
Roger Roth with us in the 10 o'clock hour to get the latest. There were some developments over the weekend, so we'll get the latest from him. But that'll do it for news today. Carol, thanks so much.
You're welcome.
We'll talk to you later
All
on.
right.
And don't go away. Lots more Fresh Take to come, including Lieutenant David Carter of the U.S. Navy previewing Navy Week this week in Northeast Wisconsin. We'll talk with him next on Fresh Take. You're listening to WHBY. Welcome back to Fresh Take. I'm your host, Josh Duclo. Joining me now is Lieutenant David Carter. Lieutenant Carter, welcome back to WHBY. Welcome for the first time to Fresh Take.
Thanks for having me on. It's great to be back.
Yeah, so glad to have you here. As I mentioned before, I know your sister through a mutual friend. Don't worry, we got our selfie taken so that we can send that off to April and my friend Erica so that they can see us together here in the studio. But really excited to have you here kicking off Navy Week here in Northeast Wisconsin. Is Navy Week something you sort of declare wherever it makes sense to do, whenever that makes sense? Or is Navy Week something that happens on a regular basis in regular places?
So it varies year to year. Our intention with Navy Week is to go to cities that don't get a regular exposure to our branch of service. So we find areas and events that are going on that we can tie into where it makes sense and really just showcase a bit of the Navy for the week.
And you're here in Northeast Wisconsin, events happening throughout the region, but you're an Appleton native.
I am. I grew up here.
That's
Left
fantastic.
about 19 years ago with the Navy. So.
Wow. So how does it feel to be back, showing your hometown what you've been a part of?
You know, it's exciting. I've always kept a close tie with Appleton. We come back over the years and visit. My wife's whole family is from here. But coming back and bringing a little bit of the Navy with me this time, it's extra special. So
Yeah, that's really cool. So what is your typical responsibility in the Navy on a daily basis? What are you doing in your Navy life?
So right now, my job is to plan Navy Weeks around the country. So it's the signature outreach program that we have, and I just have the pleasure of doing these across the country throughout the year.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, then let's get into it.
Sure.
What are some of the public events that you've planned for residents here in Northeast Wisconsin to learn more about the Navy during Navy Week?
So we have Navy Band up from Great Lakes in town. They're going to be doing a variety of concerts throughout the week. Those are ones that we typically arrange for the public to come out and see. We are doing a lot of high-level engagement with different corporations and government and community leaders. We have a two-star admiral in town who's out doing a variety of visits this week. But the concerts and then obviously our footprint out at EAA throughout the week is another great opportunity to connect.
Yeah, and now that's not sort of an inconvenient coincidence that you're in town at the same time as EAA. I know EAA tends to dominate the region when it's going on. AirVenture brings in thousands and thousands of people. One of the attractions that's here as part of the EAA this year is the Blue Angels.
Yeah, and it's the first time they're coming up to do their full show here. And so we said if we're ever going to do a Navy Week up here, this is the time to do it. So we jumped on the opportunity, and EAA has been just phenomenal in helping us out.
Oh, that's fantastic. We're talking with Lieutenant David Carter of the U.S. Navy, and we're actually live streaming video of Fresh Take right now, both on our website, WHBY.com. Go to the live video page, or on our Facebook page, facebook.com/WHBY. Live streams of the entire show today, including our conversation right now with Lieutenant Carter. So the Blue Angels, this is the first thing I remember about the Navy, was growing up hearing about the Blue Angels. They have long been and still remain, even in this age of modern technology and whiz-bang convenience, the Blue Angels remain really a strong and salient connecting point for the average citizen to the Navy. Why is that?
They fly fast jets. They're loud. They're exciting. I've seen them probably 100 times, and even now, I still get excited when they buzz into town and land. It's still a treat for me.
Yeah, we'll always be those little boys that want to play with big, fast airplanes, won't we?
Absolutely.
That's so funny. So is there a place where folks can go and get more information? Is there a website or some other place where folks can find a listing of some of the events that are
Sure.
going on?
So we have a website from Navy Outreach. It's outreach.navy.mil. There's a Navy Week tab on there and a Green Bay tab under that, and it should list all the public events that we're doing. But outside of those, we are doing a lot of stuff with the community. We're doing a project with Habitat up in Green Bay tomorrow. We're doing one on Wednesday with St. Vincent de Paul right here in Appleton. And then on Thursday, we're going to go up to St. Vincent Children's Hospital and take some sailors that we've brought back from the USS Green Bay and just interact with some children and hopefully make their day.
Yeah, wow. And so giving the community an opportunity to connect with sailors and other institutions as part of the Navy, but also giving sailors a chance to connect with people outside the Navy. I'd imagine life in the armed forces can sometimes feel a little bit closed off. Not all soldiers get to be in an outreach mission.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about what that means to some of the soldiers who get to do some of that outreach.
You know, a big part of our job and one of our responsibilities is reminding the American public about what their Navy is doing around the world. Every sailor has a different story, so Navy Week gives us a very unique opportunity to come back and share those stories. Everyone's going to be a little bit different. Mine, you know, like I said, started right here in Appleton, Wisconsin. Other sailors started across the globe. So it's really going to be a great opportunity this week to connect. And I think the enthusiasm that's just going to come out in those stories is going to be evident when the sailors sit around and tell them.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I'm looking at outreach.navy.mil, outreach.navy.mil. And then right along the top, there's Navy Weeks. You float over that, Green Bay, Fox Cities. There is a calendar embedded in this page that is chock full of events. Lots of things happening at EAA, but things happening all over the community. So if you're interested in finding out more, looking for an opportunity to connect with the Navy now while they're in town during Navy Week, this is the place to find that opportunity. You could print this calendar, even just click around a little bit, find some of the different events that are going on that fit your schedule and be a part of it. Now, you mentioned the Navy Band is in town. How big is the Navy Band overall officially?
I mean, there are numerous Navy bands around the world. We have bands in Italy, bands in Japan, bands in Washington, D.C. This band is up here from just outside of Chicago, Illinois, at our base down there. And it's about 28 folks, I think, total, but they break up into 5 or 6 different ensembles. So you'll have a rock band in town, you'll have a brass quintet, a woodwind trio, and then a full ceremonial band as well. So
wow, we're actually going to have the brass ensemble on the show on Wednesday. They will be in studio, and yes, we'll be video streaming that hour as well. So if you want to see how we managed to pack a brass quartet into a radio studio, make sure you check out the live feed on Wednesday in the 10 o'clock hour. We'll have not only the brass ensemble of the Navy Band, but also the Chief Master Command?
Command Master Chief.
Oh, I was close. The Command Master Chief of the USS Green Bay, which is kind of interesting, being able to connect with the commanding officer of our city's namesake vessel.
It is. So he is the senior enlisted on board, and he represents more than 1,000 sailors and Marines that are actually deployed right at this moment on the USS Green Bay. So it was very fortunate that we were able to get him back for this visit.
Yeah, I can only imagine the logistical challenges and the scheduling demands of putting something like this together. Thank you so much for doing it, Lieutenant David Carter, Appleton native and organizer of Navy Week here in Northeast Wisconsin. Thanks so much for visiting with us today.
Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. And don't forget to tune in Wednesday at 10 when we'll talk Navy Week some more here on Fresh Take. But that does it for now. We'll be back after the news, and we'll talk about planning for downtown Menasha, establishing a vision. What is a part of that? How does it fit with everything else that's going on? That'll be our subject in the 9 o'clock hour, and I want to hear from you. So give us a call at 281-1150 or send me an email, freshtake1150@gmail.com, freshtake1150@gmail.com. We'll talk vision for downtown Menasha right after the news.
Sick of the bickering? We've got the solution. Thoughtful talk about the issues that matter in our community. Fresh Take with Josh Duclos. Be a part of the show by calling 281-1150 or email freshtake1150@gmail.com. Now, from the Myron Construction Studio, here's Josh Duclos.
Welcome back to Fresh Take. Glad you are with us on this Monday morning. This hour of Fresh Take is brought to you by Legal Business Edge. Find attorney Sarah DeBruin at 2631 North Meade Street in Appleton, or you can find her online at legalbusinessedge.com. Legal Business Edge, a practice for your purpose. We are live streaming video of today's show. You can find it both on WHBY.com, and you can find it on our Facebook page, facebook.com/WHBY, or get that same feed over on WHBY.com. You need to find the live video page, which is under videos, not surprisingly. So WHBY.com, go to our videos and click on live videos. You'll find the stream of today's show. We're going to be doing this 9 o'clock hour as well as the 10 o'clock hour when we'll be joined by State Senator Roger Roth to talk state budget developments. It's only, 3 or so weeks overdue, so let's hope they are close to putting a bow on this thing. But in the 9 o'clock hour, we're going to talk downtown development in Menasha. There's been a lot of pieces and parts moving and happening in the downtown district in Menasha, so we're going to talk with the Community Development Director for the city of Menasha, David Buck, and a man with some experience with downtown planning. It's Andrew Dane, friend of the show. He's with SEH, and he's working with Menasha on their vision process. There's a workshop where you get to contribute your vision and your ideas for downtown. We'll tell you about that coming up in just a moment. But first, we're going to start with the takeaway, which today is about getting what you ask for. Exactly 6 months to the day of his first White House press briefing, Sean Spicer resigned the job last week. And I don't think too many people were all that shocked. After all, Mr. Spicer had come from the Republican National Committee. He was totally a Republican establishment figure. He was never part of Trump world, so to speak. And so it's not terribly surprising, given the mixed reviews Sean Spicer got not only from the public, from the press, and from his boss, but just given his seemingly rocky road through the role of press secretary, that he finally called it quits. While he was in service to President Trump, he did the best he could to do what his boss asked him to do, even if it made him look bad. He did what he needed to do. But for Spicer, the last straw was bringing in Anthony Scaramucci as the new communications director. That would essentially make him Spicer's boss. And Scaramucci said, well, the president told me I report directly to him, meaning he would be sort of around Reince Priebus, the chief of staff. This is all just strange administrative stacking. And Spicer said in an interview, it was just too many cooks in the kitchen, so he decided he would step out. But it appears Donald Trump brought in Anthony Scaramucci, or Mooch, as we will call him, to better represent his authentic voice. They're both big, brash personalities, and so it might be a better fit, but I'm wondering if it's the right fit. First, the first thing Mooch had to do was explain away the tweets he had made that were critical of Donald Trump back during the campaign when Mooch was a supporter of Scott Walker. And of course, he did that with grace and humor. But now Mooch, having never been a communications director, will have to learn how to do the job. Rather than taking and learning the traditional communications approach that would be used by a typical corporate or political communications strategist, I'm wondering if Mooch might not try to redefine the toolbox of how you even do the job. I think that would fit with the trend of disruption that we're seeing from this administration. Perhaps they'll stop trying to have these theme weeks. Remember, it was Made in America week after it was Infrastructure week, and we don't really talk too much about what the week is supposed to be. These classic policy rollouts that an old-style communications shop would do a lot, they're just not really working. And maybe that tells us something. Maybe you should stop trying. Just don't worry about it. I suspect we'll see a more aggressive approach from the press office, and that might be just what the president thinks he wants. But I'm going to say he needs to think twice. Sean Spicer began to fall out of favor with Donald Trump when he gained more recognition and a pop culture status all his own, thanks largely to Melissa McCarthy's portrayal of him on Saturday Night Live. Trump didn't think Spicer was pushing back hard enough on the media narrative, what he sees as fake news, and Melissa McCarthy's parody of him just reiterated that impression. Well, now he has a much more aggressive man leading the press shop. He's got Mooch, who I can guarantee you will push hard. We saw him on the Sunday shows this weekend, unapologetically spewing talking points from the president. And after all, that public relations staff is widely seen as having an audience of one, that one being President Donald Trump. Communications staffers say not what they think the press wants to hear, but what they know their boss, the president, wants them to say. While Spicer lacked the bombast and the savvy that Mooch brings to the job, man, Mooch has some bravado to spare, just like his boss. So with all that style and all that swagger, Mooch could quickly become another media darling. And isn't that dangerous? Isn't that ultimately what undermines Sean Spicer? If the media pays too much attention to Mooch, pulls the spotlight away from Trump, I don't know, maybe Mooch will be sent packing as well. Because despite the distractions, there is one constant of this administration, and that is Donald Trump. He runs the show, and he always will. So while a new communications director may seem like a perfect fit, if he outshines the leading man, I suspect he'll find himself on the outs very quickly. And that is a risk. Donald Trump thinks he wants a more aggressive communications shop. But if what he gets is a more high-profile communications director, he might get what he asked for, but not what he truly wants. And we all have to be careful of that. We talked last week about defining our goals very carefully and specifically. If you're going to ask for something, make sure you know exactly what you're asking for and what the effects of getting it would truly be. In local government, there's a desire to get you involved in the process. They want to know what you, the resident, the user of the community, thinks, what you want, what you expect. And just like Donald Trump needs to be careful what he's asking for, local government leaders need to be mindful of defining their goals, their projects, and their requests for input very carefully, or they may be sorry that they asked. And that's the takeaway this morning. When we come back, we'll be joined by some people looking for your input on the vision for downtown Menasha. It's David Buck, the Community Development Director for the city, and Andrew Dane of SEH. He works on projects like this for communities all over Wisconsin. We'll see what they have on the table as far as a workshop for you to contribute your vision for downtown Menasha, and we'll ask them how these pieces all fit together with the many moving parts in downtown. Talking the vision for downtown Menasha with David Buck and Andrew Dane when we come back on Fresh Take. You're listening to WHBY. Welcome back to Fresh Take. I'm your host, Josh Duclos. 66 degrees at 9:20 a.m. here at the Myron Construction Studio of WHBY. And it's my pleasure to welcome back David Buck, Community Development Director for the City of Menasha. David, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Josh. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Andrew Dane with us as well. Andrew, welcome back.
Pleasure to be here.
Great. Andrew's with SEH, Short Elliott Hendrickson, and they do consulting work for local governments, including things like downtown plans. You were involved, Andrew, with the Envision Appleton downtown plan that was last summer as part of Appleton's revised comprehensive plan.
That's right. Yeah, it's really exciting to continue working here in the Fox Valley and not have to drive all over the Midwest searching for work.
That is a nice feature right there. You get to just stay right now here close to home. Now, David, you and Andrew are working together on behalf of the city on a new vision plan for the downtown district in Menasha, and you've got a workshop where residents of the city are invited. You want them to share their thoughts. Tell us when and where the workshop is happening.
All right. Yeah, we're having a downtown vision plan public workshop. It's this Thursday night at the Menasha City Center, the new City Hall. We just moved a couple months ago. And that's at 100 Main Street in downtown Menasha. The workshop will be from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m., and we definitely encourage everybody to come on down.
Yeah, 5:30 to 7:30 at the new Menasha City Hall. New City Hall, not the old one. We'll get to the old one in just a moment, but it's on Thursday, July 27th, 5:30 at New City Hall. And what kind of exercises are you planning for people? What sort of opportunities do people have to share their input?
Well, they'll be very interactive. So this vision workshop is going to be an interactive workshop, and Andrew can probably talk a little bit more detail about the actual steps.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, we've got 3 different exercises planned. We're going to start off sort of high level and ask people for what are your hopes and concerns for the downtown. So really thinking broadly, what do people want to see when they think 10, 20, 30 years out? What's their vision for downtown? What do they want it to look like? And from there, we're going to dive a little deeper and start asking for people to provide us some ideas, thoughts and ideas for future land uses downtown. So getting a little bit more specific, are there restaurant opportunities, entertainment opportunities, additional office development opportunities? Housing has come up as a big topic. And then finally, we're going to do a visual preference exercise where we're going to present some boards with some different development styles and some different uses downtown, and just ask people to sort of give us a gut check. Do they like what they see? Is this the type of flavor and character of the type of development they'd like to see downtown? And then that sort of gets us through this first phase, which is just really listening and trying to get some sense of what direction people want to see the downtown take.
Fantastic. So really ranging these exercises from the very high level, abstract, broad, blue sky thinking all the way down to preference testing specific design elements. Is it typical in your experience, Andrew, of doing exercises like this to cover such a wide range in one single exercise?
Yeah, usually at these visioning or public input workshops, this is really the first step in this planning process where we're engaging the public at large. Really like to give people a variety of different exercises and ways in which they can provide input, because we know some people like to sort of sit down quietly and start talking to their person that's sitting next to them at the workshop. Other people like to get up in front of the group and share their ideas. So we try to mix it up and provide a variety of ways for people to share their thoughts.
Yeah, I've attended a few different workshops that you have facilitated with colleagues from SEH, and you guys do a great job of giving people that opportunity, because there isn't that mix. There's some people who'll show up with a very specific thing that they need to share that you must hear, and there's that opportunity.
Right.
For those that come with just more general feelings or a desire to contribute, you do a great job of eliciting that from them, giving them ways to get that out onto paper. So that's
thank you.
fantastic. Yeah. Now, David, let's define parameters here geographically. We're talking about downtown. I've gotten myself in trouble on this show before by talking about downtown Menasha and not really knowing my boundaries. So help us understand the area, the footprint that you're looking at in this exercise.
Sure. Typically, when people think of downtown, they just think of that Main Street corridor with the older buildings and the shops, the marina area. And our downtown is actually a much larger area. So we're defining downtown Menasha basically being Broad Street on the north, bordered on the east by Racine Street Bridge. On the west, we're going all the way over to the Lock site, following sort of the island with Coveris and River Street, going down through sort of the industrial corridor on the west portion of Doty Island, and then up Annup Street back to Racine. So it is a much larger area, about 200 acres of property actually, and what's really kind of unique for Menasha, there's about 3.5 miles of waterfront in this downtown area.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is rather than centering this area on a street, if you look at the map, and David's got one here in the studio, you've centered the area on the water. And so you're actually talking about both sides of the water. Is water usage going to be a major theme or focus of the workshop and of your planning?
Well, I can say, Menasha's tagline is "Your place on the water," and our water frontage really sets us off as a unique entity within the valley. I mean, everybody has water, but not nearly as much as Menasha. I believe Andrew has let me know that we are the third largest waterfront community in the valley, sort of behind Appleton and Kaukauna.
Yeah.
So that is an important element. And of course, the North Shore has kind of seen its retail and downtown over the last 100 years. The South Shore, the island properties, have been primarily industrial, and those are now opening up to become very big development sites, and that water frontage is definitely an asset that Menasha holds.
Yeah, we'll talk a bit again about some of those specific sites and some of the other planning elements that are going on, like Jefferson Park and some of that after the break. But we've got a couple more minutes, Andrew, and I want to dig in on this notion of water. How have you seen other communities maximize their access to water? How do you integrate water into a plan for a downtown? How does that work?
Yeah, great question. I actually just picked up this article in the B2B. I don't know if you saw this recently. It just came out this month on Riding the Current. The banks of the Fox River get a facelift in several northeast Wisconsin communities. So all up and down the Fox River, opportunities to convert industrial land into really attractive real estate. And so I guess I would answer that by just looking at our own backyards. And, you look at what's going on up in Green Bay with the new Metro building and the sports complex that they're building downtown. You look at Appleton and River Heath and all the housing and assisted living that's coming into the downtown area, as well as Oshkosh, where David worked previously, the residential development down there. So I think it really starts with, like any planning process, does start with a vision. Not every community is going to have the same vision. So we need to figure out, what is Menasha's take on the waterfront. We're not just going to try to replicate what other communities are doing. And then I think one of the other keys is just digging in for the long term. And so it's a long, we're talking 20, 30 years plus to redevelop this large of an area.
Yeah, and it is a large area. There's a lot of opportunities there. And there's sort of like the micro opportunities, the little corners, the nooks, the spots where something fun and small can be done. Then there's enormous opportunities. Before coming on the air, we were discussing some of the specifics of the graphic packaging site. Now, does that technically fall within your purview here, the area that you've defined as downtown, David?
It definitely does. Yes, it's sort of right in the middle.
Yeah, and that is, we'll call it a huge opportunity. That is something big that could happen there. But before the city knows where to lead that project and that effort, you really want to hear from residents about what they want out of their downtown.
That's correct. We have a comprehensive plan in Menasha, like all communities in Wisconsin. It is about 10 years old. There's been a lot of activity in downtown Menasha, some good, some bad, over the last 5-10 years. And that really needs to be updated. So we see this downtown vision plan as really being something that can be incorporated into an update of a comprehensive plan, but also kind of give you a refreshed vision, a refreshed focus, kind of generate some buzz downtown,
Yeah.
as well as give staff and elected officials a direction on where to market these properties and what to really go out and look for from a community standpoint.
Right, being able to reflect that voice of the residents in those decisions and directions. We're talking with David Buck, Community Development Director from the City of Menasha, and Andrew Dane, the consultant working with the city to define that vision. And we want to hear from you as well. We're going to have lots more questions here. We've got another segment with David and Andrew, but we want you to be a part of it. So give us a call. 281-1150 is the number. 281-1150 or toll free 1-866-887-1150. You can also email me at freshtake1150@gmail.com. We're going to talk about some of the specific opportunities within that downtown frame and how it all fits together right after this. You're listening to Fresh Take on WHBY. Welcome back to Fresh Take. I'm your host, Josh Duclo. We're talking a vision for downtown Menasha with David Buck, Community Development Director, and Andrew Dane of SEH. He's worked with communities all over the Midwest on developing just these kinds of proposals. There's a workshop for you to participate in happening this week, Thursday, July 27th at 5:30 at the new Menasha City Hall. That is 100 Main Street. So at 5:30 until 7:30, they want your input. We're going to talk about the input they've already received and how the vision plan will work with some of the other elements in downtown. But we want to hear from you too. So give us a call at 281-1150. We've got Joe on the line first. Joe, thanks for your phone call this morning. What's on your mind?
Good morning. How are you guys today?
Doing well. How are you?
Very good.
Pretty good. I just have a question and a comment about this kayak business down that opened up this year down by the marina. And I know that since they've opened, there have been 3 kayakers that have been rescued already because of the current by the dam. Now, to me, it's not a question of whether it's going to happen or not, but somebody's going to get killed going through the locks, the gates. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of time. My question is, why wouldn't they move that kayak business to below the dam on the old Gilbert site or the old Bonta site down there where they're already below the dam? They have a little bit of current. They can use it as like a rapids type deal. If they fall out, it's shallow enough they can stand up and walk away in parts of that area. If they want to go on the upside, have them work out of over by Smith Park there, by that little marina. Why do they have this thing where these kayakers have to go through past the dam where there's so much current? It's just plain dangerous.
Really appreciate that phone call, Joe. Thank you so much for your concern. David, what do you think about that? Locating this business a little differently to try and eliminate some of that risk?
Sure, I think there would be definite opportunity for that. The Gilbert site, as you had mentioned, Joe, would be an excellent place. The kayak company itself is a small business, a startup business. It's Fox River Kayaking, excellent company. they're a startup, so developing a brand new structure on the South Shore might be beyond their means at this point, although in the future I could see something like that happening. I also wanted to point out with their business, they do a lot of guided kayaking and waterboarding. I believe it's called paddleboarding.
Stand-up paddleboard, yep.
Yes, and so they do a lot of guided, and so they do have guides that take you in the safe routes and are trained. I don't know if the kayakers who've gotten in trouble were independent kayakers or if they're coming from the kayak company. But again, as we had mentioned, our waterfront is very attractive to kayaking and boating, and that's something we want to encourage. Maybe a little bit more education and safety are in the future.
Yeah, I also have not heard that those kayakers who have sort of gotten caught up near dams or other structures, whether they've been with the tours or not, haven't heard that they are. I always assume that those are people who are out kind of exploring on their own and underestimate a current or get caught up in something. But certainly the safety of this water use is something all of the communities who want to exploit their water frontage have to keep in mind. And some of that does fall on the individual as well as the business who might be that guided tour. But Joe, great point. As Fox River Kayaking Company, and I know Sarush, we were talking about him just when we were off the air here. It's a great company doing a wonderful thing, but absolutely we've got to make sure that, and he would be the first to say his priority is going to be safety as well. Very important to keep everybody safe when they're using the waterfront. So thanks so much for that call, Joe. Great to hear from you. But David, let's look at some of the pieces in this downtown. You said you're talking about an area that goes from Broad Street on the north, down Racine Street Bridge, down Anneps Street, and kind of loops around the industrial part on Doty Island, coming in all the way then over to the lock on the west. So that's quite a big area that you're talking about. Some big nuggets within that, we'll call it, is two areas for redevelopment. One, the Gilbert Mill that Joe mentioned, and then also the graphic packaging site that I had mentioned earlier. What's the prospect for redeveloping those sites? Are you looking for ideas from people in this workshop? Is this part of what you're hoping to get a clearer picture on?
It is. It's definitely what we're hoping to get a clearer picture on. I mean, these are very large-scale redevelopment sites and what we call opportunity sites because most downtowns with waterfront like this do not have this large of area as opportunity sites. So what we're really looking for is what type of land uses for throughout the downtown, but in particular for these opportunity sites are most desirable to the community. And then also probably to some extent prioritizing where the city should be focusing these sites on. None of them are held by the public. These are all privately owned sites. But obviously the owners, the city all work together to try to get them redeveloped.
Yeah. We've got Jeff on the line next. Jeff has a question about the R.R. Donnelly site. Now, before we bring him on, R.R. Donnelly site, would that be Gilbert Mill? Where is the...
That is directly east of the Gilbert Mill. It's at the corner of Racine and Annepp. It is the old Bonta Paper Building, and then what I call the Peninsula. I don't know if that's what it's actually called, but there's the vacant land, a lot of fishing going on there, just to the north, right on the water next to the dam.
All right, so that's the site we're talking about. Jeff has a question. Jeff, go right ahead.
Well, I guess the question I have is, how close are you to working with them to raise that building? And, that is not anything what private industry wants to get into, something like that.
Yeah, Jeff, interesting point.
And
go ahead.
And graphic packaging is the same thing. That was built in the late 40s. That is just not what the private sector industry is going to go into, something like that. So
yeah,
both of them sites would be fantastic. The potential is just unbelievable if you can get, the office buildings is an example of what things, how things can get done.
Yeah, Jeff, thanks so much for the phone call. Andrew, look into your experience on this one, having worked with redevelopment efforts like this in other communities. How common is it to find an industrial reuse for industrial sites like this? And then how often have you seen creative reuse be successful? Tearing a building down, putting something new up. Talk a little bit about the prospect for that.
Sure. Well, as David mentioned, this is pretty unique. I mean, if we look up and down the Fox River here, just the size and scale of these opportunity sites is pretty unique. We're not really seeing a lot of industrial sites, and we're working in the Inner Harbor, Milwaukee, working in La Crosse, working in different communities on water, not seeing a lot of industrial areas being redeveloped as industrial. seeing more and more, and our preliminary market study findings for this project suggest that there's a strong demand for urban forms of housing. So similar to what we're seeing in other Fox Cities communities, interest in row houses, medium density residential condominiums, market rate apartments. So we're seeing that from the market study is suggesting that housing may be a really good option for some of these larger sites, as well as a decent potential for additional eating and drinking establishments, with retail development really being driven more by independent businesses. So as we look in the downtown area, in any downtown, we're always thinking we have to bring in more density, more people to support the businesses. You know, it's really the old adage that, you know, retail and commercial, it follows rooftops. So we need to get more rooftops into the downtown and on the water where people want to live.
And quickly, that demand for downtown residential, is that unique to any age group or anything, or are you seeing that across the boards?
I don't have that market study right in front of me,
Sure.
but I think, you know, and typically they're talking about, you know, younger, you know, type millennials as well as older sort of empty nesters is kind of the cliche, you know, demand.
Yeah.
David, I don't know if you remember the exact figures.
Right. I don't remember the exact figures, but it was the millennials and the and sort of the baby boomers were the two sort of underserved markets in the valley
Okay.
that come up from these preliminary results of the market study. And I would like to point that out too as well. We are working. Andrew's part of actually a team, SEH, and a company called Place Dynamics are working together on our vision plan with the city. Place Dynamics is a market research and economic development firm. So, you know, Andrew is great doing the planning, doing the visioning, and then we have a grounding in market reality, and those two things definitely need to go together.
Yeah, it gets tempting in these vision exercises to really dream big and imagine the sky as possibility. And in some ways it can be, but it is important to ground that in reality. I think the most frustrating plans sometimes are those that can accurately reflect the dreams and desires of the public, but are disconnected from what could actually possibly happen. And then, yes, you had your voice heard, but it doesn't actually turn into anything because it wasn't realistic to start with. So that's always a danger. We've got Gary on the line now. He's got questions about these opportunity sites as well. Gary, you're on the line. What's on your mind?
Good morning, Josh,
Morning.
and to your guests, too. My question is, my understanding was when the Gilbert site was abandoned or changed use, that some attorneys and investors went in and bought the whole site and tore down the mill and reused the office building. But my question has to do with Coveris and graphic packaging and LCS or LSC, former Bonta site, and whiting paper and the old steam plant. If any of those are dark, so to speak, or vacant, what are you guys doing to hook up with those corporations to repurpose or reuse, or what are the private owners of that property, of those properties? What are their plans on what they want to do with them? Are they just going to let them sit there? And is this costing the taxpayer money by not being used? Or is the city going to acquire those properties? Or what's the plan for the vacant buildings?
Great question, Gary. Thanks so much. David, what can you tell us about that?
Sure. Well, you kind of mentioned a lot of different sites, some active and some not. So obviously, U.S. Paper or Sunoco is a very active user downtown. Great employer, great business to have. Coveris as well is doing very, very well. Simply Incredible Foods, who are in the former steam plant, they're a sort of a startup and fledgling company. All indications that they're doing pretty well. And then some of your, as you call, dark buildings. So you have whiting paper that just closed, and graphic packaging, and also the Bonta Mill. We've had conversations with all of those owners as far as the city goes. Some are more active in their intentions to reuse. The whiting paper site, I know the owner there is very, very interested in adaptive reuse. It's right across from the lock, right across or right by the trestle trail. So that's a very desirable site for him to see reused. The Bonta site is sort of a kind of a waiting right now. We've had a lot of interest from people who wanted to put housing in there, but there is the whole Racine Street Bridge and potential realignment of Racine Street Bridge that could potentially impact that building itself. And then graphic packaging is a very, very large building that's over 500,000 square feet of area on 2 floors.
It's huge. That is enormous.
That is enormous. It is being marketed right now by the owners, and I believe they're still marketing that as an industrial property, but I know they're open for any type of adaptive reuse as well.
Yeah, interesting. And that's where hearing from the public, knowing what they would like to see happen there, obviously back on the tax roll is probably a shared goal everyone has in this, get these properties back into productive use. But what exactly fits there and who has the means to take the risk to develop the project? I mean, there's a lot of that consideration that goes in. Does the city have in mind any type of support or active role they might play in these redevelopment projects, depending what ends up surfacing?
Sure, the city is definitely an active partner in redevelopment, whether that be technical assistance or other assistance. Private-public partnerships are the best way to get anything done. Very difficult for a private owner to redevelop or reuse a site on their own. But I think this visioning is really the first step, because any potential developer coming in wants some type of assurance that what they're proposing to do or what they're paying money to start developing is something that's acceptable to the community and, of course, to the city council. And so this visioning plan is really that first step in getting that vision and sort of the groundwork in where people can feel a little bit more comfortable coming in and doing some investment, some preliminary investment before the properties are actually acquired or redeveloped.
Yeah, and that's something we got to keep in mind as well. If a private developer is going to come in and redevelop these sites, it needs to make economic sense, what they're trying to do with it, and compared to the options they have to do that activity elsewhere. And sometimes that's more complicated than first meets the eye. Reminder, there is a workshop coming up this week, Thursday, July 27th, at the new Menasha City Hall, 100 Main Street at 5:30 p.m., 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. Different phased activities for you to participate in to share your thoughts, desires, and dreams for downtown, and even some of your tastes in what downtown might look like. Now, it's in the new City Hall. What's happening with the old City Hall, David? Anything you can tell us about that?
Well, we just moved out of there a month ago, a little over a month ago. Right now, we're probably just going to be marketing it for sale. My personal desire there, I would love to see some housing or maybe some mixed use in that City Hall. It would take a little bit of redevelopment. However, that's also wrapped into this visioning plan as an opportunity site. Yeah. So again, I have my ideas, my professional opinion of what uses I would love to see down there, but this is a community vision, and that's really what we're going for.
Yeah, no shortage of opportunities, that's for sure. Last question for you guys, Andrew and David. Bazaar After Dark just had their first visit to downtown Menasha. It was quite a sight to behold. Thousands of people out enjoying Main Street and food trucks and the local businesses as well. I made a point to look, and those local businesses were booming as well as having lots of people out in the streets, live music, arts, and dancers and all sorts of things going on. They had a dream board at their event, asking people what their dream was for Menasha. Make sure you guys get a hold of that, because there were some interesting comments that you might find mirrored in your workshop coming up on Thursday. But just last thing is thoughts about what you felt or saw when Bazaar After Dark was happening in downtown. Angela, we'll start with you.
Well, as we were talking before, we both felt that, of the 3 Bazaar After Darks have happened so far, this just the intimate feeling, the closeness of the buildings, the narrowness of the street, the Curtis Park downtown, how that framed up the stage. Just really felt urban, and it felt like the perfect place to do Bazaar After Dark. One of the observations I had, I went down to the Riverwalk. Menasha has a beautiful Riverwalk. It's kind of hidden and a little detached from the downtown. Didn't see a lot of people down there, so we know that's one of the opportunities going forward, is to really engage that river in a dynamic way and get some bounce between the river and the downtown.
Yeah, David, last thoughts on that?
Oh, well, Menasha was the perfect place for Bazaar After Dark. The business owners that are down there, a lot of them very new, really came together to help make the event happen. I have to give a shout out to Adrian Palm and the Convention Visitor Bureau for making this happen. It was a great event. What I really like to see about it is it does showcase our downtown. Showcases the business that were there. As you had mentioned, they had a lot of activity.
Absolutely.
And I think when people realize what's down there, that's something to draw them back. And also just to see what's around and those opportunity sites, for future investment as well. But it was very, very successful. And these types of events, in my opinion, are incredibly important for the downtown.
Absolutely. That's David Buck, Community Development Director for the City of Menasha, and Andrew Dane with SEH, supporting the city in their pursuit of a vision for downtown Appleton. They want to know what you think at this public workshop happening Thursday, July 27th. That's this week, Thursday, at 5:30 p.m. at the new Menasha City Hall at 100 Main Street, 5:30 p.m. on Thursday. Vision session for downtown Menasha. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here this morning. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, Josh.
My pleasure. We'll be back to wrap up this hour right after this. Don't go away. More Fresh Take to come on WHBY. Welcome back to Fresh Take. I'm your host, Josh Duclo. Great conversation about planning for the future of downtown Menasha. So many opportunity sites, as they were calling them. The Gilbert Mill, graphic packaging, One Menasha Center, sort of the crown jewel of recent development efforts downtown, looked great as sort of a center focal piece for Bazaar After Dark. But these local government professionals like David Buck and Andrew Dane, they are often seeking input, opinions, ideas, and suggestions from the citizens of the community where they work. That's part of their job, is public feedback, citizen participation. And they're looking for your ideas. They want to hear from you how you want to see downtown grow, what you want to have there, and then how those pieces fit together with the opportunities that are available. Again, unless you are the one with the millions of dollars to pour into these ideas, you probably aren't looking to the city to be that developer either. Now, the city does have a role in what David described as public-private partnerships. We talked about that recently here on the show, about public-private partnerships, about TIF use, and other ways that communities can facilitate and grow some of these projects, these visions, cultivate them to become reality. But at times, sometimes, and I don't think this is the case here, sometimes professionals are looking for your feedback simply to validate existing plans or concepts, right? They're coming with something already in mind, and they're going to cherry pick that feedback that supports what they already wanted to do. And very rarely do these things result in truly revolutionary ideas, right? I mean, if it was truly revolutionary and it was plausible, maybe. But the things that are way out there, typically there's some reason why that's not going to work unless somebody wants to come and make it work. But they're seeking your input on Thursday. So you should give it to them. 5:30 p.m. at the new City Hall, 100 Main Street on Thursday. Give it to them in a way that can't be ignored. Give them the plans. Give them the numbers. Seize this opportunity to be a part of the planning for the future of your community. Because that's what they're asking for. They want your participation. Don't wave it off and, oh, they aren't going to listen to me anyway. Get in there. Tell them what you think. You know this city at least as well as they do, if not better. They need you to be a part of that effort. They want your input, so give it to them. I've seen firsthand how the input that comes from the public works together with market research, key stakeholder feedback, and the techniques and expertise of the professionals to put together a really robust vision for what can happen in a community. And these visions can transform a community, bring more residential, bring more commercial. Now, is it all going to be perfect and work 100% of the time? Absolutely not. That's life. But they need your ideas to give them the best chance of success and to make it the community you want to live in. So be a part of that public workshop Thursday, 5:30 p.m., New City Hall, 100 Main Street in Menasha. When we come back, we're going to talk with Lisa Malik from Local 5 Live, and then we'll be joined by State Senator Roger Roth to talk state budget. We're streaming live on WHBY.com and on Facebook, so you can watch this hour and listen to us. We'll be back with more after this.
Sick of the bickering? We've got the solution. Thoughtful talk about the issues that matter in our community. Fresh Take with Josh Duclo. Be a part of the show by calling 281-1150 or email freshtake1150@gmail.com. Now, from the Myron Construction Studio, here's Josh Duclo.
And welcome back to Fresh Take. This hour brought to you by Hooper Law Office. Call Peter Harbach and Sarah Kahns at 1-800-794-5548. Hooper Law Office, providing a pathway to your legacy. And we are kicking off our 10 o'clock hour on a Monday, as we often do, by chatting with our friend Lisa Malik from Local 5 Live. Good morning, Lisa.
Hi, Josh.
How are you today?
I am still tapping my toes, man. We had the brass ambassadors from the Navy Band Great Lakes on this morning, and I'm happy to say I have Anchors Away in my head.
Oh, how nice. That's a nice little tune.
Yeah, I mean, they played for us twice this morning, and I have to tell you, I think are you going to be having them on as well?
Yeah, the brass quintet will be in studio with me on Wednesday during the 10 o'clock hour. I was watching them on your show this morning in the background, and I'm sort of wondering how we're going to fit them all in our studio, but we're going to do it. We're going to make it work.
You know, they're such professional musicians. They will make it work.
Yeah.
I mean, I was so impressed with these guys. And also, we had chief musician Audra on, and she was talking a little bit about, because we were curious about the path. I know it's very difficult to get into a band of this status, you know?
Right.
A lot of these guys have college degrees, master's degrees. Some of them even have PhDs in music. And this is something they do once they've established their musical career. So she was saying she went to basic training when she was 33. And so they were calling her grandma.
A non-traditional recruit at that age.
And a lot of them are.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people will join the military just after high school or college, and these guys have really gone on to establish their musical careers. One guy that we talked to had been at Disney World for 13 years doing music,
As a
and now
musician.
is playing in the Navy Band. I mean, it's so impressive, and Navy Week is such a cool thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Well, and I'm excited that we'll be able to see so many different opportunities to interact with and learn about the U.S. Navy here this week in this area, not just the Blue Angels stunt show as part of EAA, but all these concerts that the band is doing and different performances and appearances of different Navy members. Yes, so the 10 o'clock hour on Wednesday on Fresh Take, and we'll be video streaming that hour so you can see those professional musicians cramming themselves here into our studio and playing for us. That's going to be a great time.
I'm going to watch that.
Yeah, I hope so. We're also video streaming this hour right now, Lisa, because I'll be joined in just a moment by State Senator Roger Roth with the latest on state budget negotiations, so that should be a good one. So you're making your Fresh Take video debut as well. I hope you...
I was going to ask you, because I know you told me that you were streaming today, and I wasn't sure if it was just audio or video, and I was going to write on there, you can see Josh roll his eyes when he talks.
Never, Lisa, never.
This is going to be my way to check on you.
You can go back and check the tape.
We did talk about it this morning, though. Did you see your picture on the air?
Yeah, oh, no, I missed that. I must have been...
Yeah,
you know, occasionally I do pay attention to my show while it's going on as well, every once in a while. So
well,
thanks
I'm always so impressed that you're like, yeah, I saw this on your show, and I'm like, how do you do that? You are the ultimate multitasker.
On in the background. Well, and I've learned multitasking not always what it's cracked up to be. But one of the fun things that went on this past weekend in Appleton that I do want to mention, and have you seen the photos of Acre of Art?
I
all
have.
of these sculptures.
Those sculptures are amazing.
Yeah, very cool. So 9 new pieces added to downtown. They'll be around for a couple of years. Next year, they'll bring in another 9, 10, 12 pieces added to that, and then rotating each year. Some will come, some will go. So really a vivid and eye-catching addition to downtown Appleton.
And it'll draw the attention of a lot of children there this week.
Yes, it will, because it's Children's Week in downtown.
Oh, I love this as a parent because it saves you money, too. There's so many free admissions for things. But, of course, we had Jordan Lamers was substituting for Anthony this morning, and he was down at the building for kids. One of the highlights, for sure, is the Children's Parade. Have you ever seen pictures of that? It's just so darn cute.
I have been caught in the midst of the Children's Parade in the past. And yes, cute is one word I would describe for it. As not a parent, not that I have anything against kids, but it is quite a scene. It's hectic, and it is so much fun for the kids and families who are a part of it. Certainly worthwhile, but it is a melee in downtown of kids and costumes and floats and candy and all kinds of fun stuff happening. And that's Wednesday this week, is that right?
Yeah, Wednesday
night.
6 o'clock. Yeah, I guess if it were to surprise me and come upon me like that, it might be a different story.
Well, because I have worked and lived in and around downtown since I've been back here for almost a decade now. And yeah, every once in a while, I will not have it marked in my calendar that this is happening, and I'll come out of work and say, oh, that's right. That's right. I'm not going anywhere. But it's so much fun for all the families and kids who are a part of it. Now, that's Wednesday night. It's Navy Week. It's Children's Week. I think we could also maybe call this Packers Week. Because the long, terrible wait we've had to endure will soon be over. Packers training camp starts on Thursday.
I can't believe it. And today is the shareholders meeting. So, it's already buzzing around down there.
Of course.
Yeah, even when I was driving around this weekend too, it was just kind of crazy around there. You can tell that we're almost there. There's just a lot of excitement in the area. But yeah, and then there's that new Titletown tailgate zone
Right.
from Johnsonville. I mean, like 13,000 square feet of fun indoors.
There's always
restrooms.
so many new things every year now. There's some new thing you have to go and experience. And, kudos to those Lambeau Field folks, always giving people something new to enjoy and explore there. Another reason to come back in addition to the football.
Yeah. Hey, and is it true we might run into you on Friday? Are you going to be down at EAA? This is our town on Friday is at EAA.
Right. So you're headed there. I, unfortunately, will not be able to head down
darn
there.
it.
No, I know. Again, it's being surrounded by hundreds of thousands of people. Not my number one favorite thing in the world. This is why I sit alone in a studio and do my thing here, which you can see on the video stream right now. Josh sitting alone in a studio with my friend Zach working the boards. Zach, you can wave up there at the video camera a little bit. Show
Hi,
folks
Zach.
that. There we go. But yeah, EAA is going on, and we will. I can't wait to see what you have going on down there. Are you going to be participating, doing anything fun while you're there?
We are kind of because of cords and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
We are usually, but our set is right there in Boeing Plaza.
Okay.
So there's some really cool planes in the background, usually like a big military transport plane kind of thing in the background. I haven't heard exactly who it's going to be yet, but of course I put in my interview request for Buzz Aldrin.
All you can do is ask. All you can do is ask.
You got to shoot for the moon, right? But
Oh, good one. Wow. Even without Mullane, you are just on today, Lisa. I love it. I love it.
I've had a lot of coffee this morning, Josh, and I got up super early, so we'll leave it at that.
Well, so let me ask you this. Zach was asking, now the next time that you have a fill-in host, particularly our friend Frank, we love seeing Frank fill in, sitting there next to you at the desk. Next time that's the case, could we maybe get him to hold over and join us on our chat?
Oh my gosh, yes.
All right.
I know he'd love to.
We'll have to work on that for the next time. Now, we love Mullane, of course, and we love you, Lisa, but we'll have to try to get Frank on here one of these times and chat with him as well.
Sure, absolutely. I will. I mean, he's so funny. He's like got his microphones off before the end of the show because he's such a busy guy. And
Right.
today's his birthday, actually.
Oh.
So he was going to be running, I think, he had an appointment at the gym and, all that stuff.
Of course.
But I bet he'll take 10 minutes to talk with you.
Busy. Well, hey, send Frank our birthday wishes from the
I
team down here
will.
at Fresh Take. And thanks so much for taking a few minutes to chat with us. Good luck with all the fun stuff that you've got going on, and enjoy EAA on Friday.
Yeah, and you enjoy, really, you're in for a treat Wednesday with the Navy Band. I'm going to be
so
watching
excited.
online.
I actually played trombone in high school,
Oh,
and so
okay.
I've got a little bit of the brass background, and so yeah, I'm really, really looking forward to that. It's going to be great.
Oh, well, maybe you could join in a little bit. Bring in that old trombone.
We'll leave it to the professionals, Lisa. We'll leave it to the professionals. All right, have a great Monday.
Okay, talk to you next week.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.
After this, we will be joined by State Senator Roger Roth to get the latest developments on the state budget. So don't go away. More Fresh Take to come right after this on WHBY. Welcome back to Fresh Take. I'm your host, Josh Duclo. Joining me now in the Myron Construction Studio of WHBY is State Senator Roger Roth. Senator Roth, welcome back to Fresh Take.
Good morning, Josh. Great to be here.
Do you mind if I just call you Roger for the interview?
No, please go
All
ahead.
right, that'll make it a little bit easier. Over the weekend, the Green Bay Press-Gazette had an editorial saying that they saw the state Senate as blocking compromise on a budget. I did get an email from a listener. Jill asked, how come when anyone in the private sector doesn't meet their deadline, they get fired? But public sectors miss the deadline, like passing a state budget, and even though you've got control of all the branches, you're able to wait as long as you want. How do you answer a question? I'm sure that's not the first time you had a constituent ask that. How do you talk about that?
Well, let me just say that the Senate is absolutely not being obstructionist. We're working very diligently in trying to be as forthcoming as we can with the Assembly and the governor to get a budget passed. Nobody understands as much as myself the importance of passing a budget by our deadline. Now, our deadline is July 1st. We did the extraordinary step, I don't know how many generations ago, to make sure that if we don't pass it by that deadline, that the government doesn't shut down. This isn't like what happens in Washington. Typically, budgets get passed in the middle of July. This year, I think we're probably looking at the end of July, beginning of August. So the good news is that government is not shutting down, but this is giving us a good chance, both the Assembly and the Senate, to work through the issues that we have, and we're going to have a good budget, a great budget passed here shortly.
Fantastic. Well, confidence that a budget will be passed. Luckily, no immediate severe negative consequences from not having a budget ready to go at that point of the deadline. There have been a few proposals now floated at working towards a compromise. It was last Tuesday that you, along with your Senate leadership colleagues, Senator Darling and Senator Fitzgerald, introduced your Senate compromise budget proposal. And in that budget, among many other things, you had proposed $712 million in borrowing to fund road projects. Why do you believe that degree of borrowing is a responsible choice?
Sure. Well, first let me say that the only area I think that there is disagreement between the Assembly and the Senate is on transportation. The rest of the budget, by and large, there is full agreement on, or at least substantial agreement
That's
on.
an important point. Most of this is ready to go. It's this last piece.
It's the last sliver here is transportation. So the Senate's looking at this, just to give a little historical context that I know your listeners are well aware of, but we went into this process with the governor saying no tax or fee increases, period.
Right.
Then you had the Assembly who absolutely wanted to see tax or fee increases. And the Senate sort of was caught in the middle, but recognizing that the governor holds all of the cards in this process because he has a line item veto. And I heard at my budget hearings, and I heard from people that, well, why does he? Well, it's just our system of government. He has that ability to do that. And that's why the Senate has backed away from that and said, since the governor is going to veto it, it is not an option. So we still have to find a way to meet the needs of our transportation infrastructure today. And the proposal that we came out with last week, Tuesday, $718 million in bonding, it keeps what the governor has identified that we need for transportation infrastructure moving forward. It keeps those projects online. Southeast Wisconsin, we're able to add those in with another $350 million in revenue-supported bonding, which is bonding that is paid for. We're able to add that in, and that's why I think if you look at our budget, we recognize the fact that if we delay projects moving forward, we're going to increase the costs. Inflationary spending in infrastructure ranges from 4 to 7%. Bonding is about 2 to 3%. So you can do the math. You realize that the longer we delay, the more the projects cost. So we here in the Senate, as we look at the DOT, as we try to bring needed reforms, and we can talk about those in a minute, we recognize that we cannot stop those projects from moving forward, or it'll be the least conservative of all positions because we'll be costing more money to finish those in the future than if we bring that small amount of bonding that's paid for now in to keep those projects moving.
So I want to make sure I understand this. The cost of doing the project now requires that we borrow, but the cost of borrowing is 2 to 3% interest. Whereas if we delayed the projects, the cost inflation of doing the projects later is actually 4 to 7%. So you're saying it actually costs more to do the projects later because the costs will be higher. It's better to just borrow it now and get the projects done now.
It costs more to delay.
Okay.
And I'm a home builder.
Yeah.
I build houses for people. If you're one of these people, Josh, God love you. If you can save up the $250,000 it's going to take you to buy yourself an average home today, all power to you. That's awesome. That's the way you should do it. But recognizing the fact that most people aren't in a position where they can do that, we all accept that in certain instances you can take out a reasonable or responsible amount of bonding or borrowing, in this case a mortgage to buy a home. And that's what we're doing with our transportation infrastructure. We're creating projects that are going to last 40, 50, 60, 70 years. We have never as a state paid for these with 100% cash. It really financially is going to be impossible for us to do so. No other state in the United States does this with cash, and that's why to have the level of bonding which we have, which is paid for, mind you, it's revenue supported, this is the lowest level of bonding in 20 years. So we're bringing bonding down, we're meeting our transportation infrastructure needs moving forward, and we're saving money by not delaying the projects today.
We're talking with State Senator Roger Roth about the latest developments in the state budget negotiations, specifically road borrowing. You and your Senate colleagues introduced a compromise budget proposal that included just over $700 million in borrowing, half of which, in your proposal, was backed with general purpose revenue. This is money that comes in through income tax and sales tax, typically goes towards local governments, healthcare, education, corrections, and other state priorities. If $350 million of general purpose revenue is going to back the new borrowing in your proposal, that's less money that's available for those other priorities, isn't it?
Is a correction. It's not $350 million in GPR dollars. What we're looking for to bond for $350 million in today's environment in this budget costs $8 million. moving forward, that would cost $26 million a biennium after this biennium. And we're taking a 1 penny from the PECFA fund, which brings in $38 million a year. This is a petroleum fund to go and remove old fuel tanks. I think it was put in by Tommy Thompson 30 years ago. That's all but dried up. We don't need the money anymore. We don't need the tax that we're taxing on gas. We're able to take one of those pennies and divert it to support this bonding. So revenue-supported bonding, which we're able to $350 million worth, keep our needs moving forward today, and we're paying for that. But just to make sure, it's not $350 million coming out of general purpose revenue.
Okay, I appreciate that clarification. I think this is where the numbers around borrowing tend to get a little confusing because you're not paying that off, obviously, in 1 year. That's why you're borrowing. It's a little bit of revenue each year that's going to be dedicated for the life of those bonds.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And borrowing is, in some instances, it's a good thing, like we talked about for infrastructure. In some instances, it's a very bad thing. If you're the state of Illinois and you have to borrow money to pay the salaries of your state employees, that's very bad. If you have to borrow money to pay your lottery winners, that's very bad. If you're borrowing money to help support infrastructure, these are investments that will be here for 2, 3, 4 generations, that's good bonding. I think we would all agree that's a responsible way to bond.
All right, so just a couple minutes here before we have to take our first break. At the end of last week, there was news of what seemed at the time to be like a compromise. The governor and Assembly Republicans talked about actually redirecting $200 million from an income tax cut towards road funding and then not having any additional borrowing. Where are you personally and your Senate Republican colleagues on that potential compromise?
Yeah, I'm very excited that the Assembly was able to come up with something here. You know, the main driver in us bringing forth our budget position last week, Tuesday, is we wanted to get this process moving again. We wanted to get people talking, both sides talking again. And to that extent, I think it was largely successful. The one thing I don't know about the concept, is what I will call it, from the Assembly, is we've seen no numbers on it. So I can tell you just from what I've heard, they're looking to scrap away all of the tax cuts that were included in this budget, apply those to transportation, remove all of the bonding, and then we'll be able to move forward. The trouble is the governor had $500 million in bonding. There's $200 million in tax cuts. I don't know the math. I haven't seen anything from the Fiscal Bureau. The proposal we outlined last week, that was a fully vetted document from the Fiscal Bureau. You could pass that into law tomorrow. This concept, there's just too many unknowns out there, too many uncertainties. Yeah. So the good news is we'll be able to talk and get together, but if they're serious, they've got to do the work and work with Fiscal Bureau and give us hard numbers we can look at.
And I think this Assembly and Governor compromise is also related to or reliant on that infusion of federal funding that Governor Walker had talked about, the $300 million he was going to request in additional transportation aids. So yeah, far from a complete budget proposal, more of a concept. I think that I think it's a pretty fair characterization. So how do we get to the end on this? How do we get to a budget that can actually be passed? What needs to happen next?
So we're going to pass a budget, Josh, and it's going to be soon.
Good.
I'm looking you in the eye and I'm telling you that.
You know that I've been concerned about this. I know you and your staff have been listening to me rant about this for weeks. I am still concerned about this. I know I've got listeners who are concerned. So what needs to happen to get to that point of passing a budget?
The most important thing that needed to happen is happening now, and that's that both sides are talking. So the Assembly, we've got to see, they've got to put some numbers to their concept. We've got numbers to ours. They've got to get some Fiscal Bureau hard, in fact, and truthful numbers to that, and we can begin to sit down and hammer this out. I mean, at the totality of this budget, this is a very small sliver we're talking about here. We're talking about a couple $100 million in bonding, holding up a $76 billion budget. So the finish line is really there as soon as we can break through this, and I'm hopeful, really. I've been hopeful all along, you know that, but yes. I'm hopeful that in the next week and a half, we'll be able to get this put aside. And then from there, it's just a matter of formality. You need a couple of days for Joint Finance to come in, probably 3 days to do the wrap-up stuff. And then it's just a matter of giving Fiscal Bureau enough time to draft the document. That's probably going to take them 4, 5, 6 days. Okay. And then from there, we're able to go to the floor and pass it.
So once you get to that position where everyone can agree on what belongs in the budget, then it still does take some procedural time to get that drafted into legislation, get that through the process, and get it onto the governor's desk.
Probably about a week or week and a half.
Okay.
But again, most of this budget is we're in agreement. You talk to any Assembly rep, they're going to tell you when it comes to education, when it comes to property, we're in agreement on this budget. It's just the transportation, how we responsibly allocate those fundings moving forward, and I think we're getting closer.
Yeah, we're talking with State Senator Roger Roth. If you've got questions about the state budget negotiations, we welcome your phone calls. 281-1150 is the number, 281-1150, or toll free on our TDS Metrocom line at 1-866-887-1150. You can also email me, freshtake1150@gmail.com, or tweet at me at Josh Duclo, or tweet at the Senator at Senator Roth. We'll be back with more with your questions. I've got a few more questions as well related to the budget and a few other things happening in Madison. We'll be back with more with State Senator Roth right after this on Fresh Take. You're listening to WHBY. Welcome back to Fresh Take. I'm your host, Josh Duclo, and we've got State Senator Roger Roth with us. We're also live streaming this hour on our Facebook page, facebook.com/WHBY, or you can find it at WHBY.com under videos, the live video box. This hour of Fresh Take is brought to you by Hooper Law Office. Find them in Appleton, Green Bay, or Oshkosh, or find them online at hooperlawoffice.com. Hooper Law, providing a pathway to your legacy. So, State Senator Roth, thanks so much for being with us today.
Yeah, great to be here.
Also, very appreciative for your time. And for those of you who want to be a part of the show, give us a call, 281-1150. We've got a caller on the line, and it is Jim. Jim is online with a question about the state budget. Jim, go right ahead.
Yeah, I just have a question concerning, I know a senator or a congressman brought up into a bill into law or trying to pass a law to legalize recreational marijuana. And I've been a big proponent of this for years. I've seen what it's done to other states as far as income to their states. And how long before Wisconsin is going to jump on board and take advantage of this big revenue that could be made?
Great question, Jim. I appreciate it. It has a budget context, although I don't think this has really been much of a conversation point in this biennial budget. But Roger, what can you tell us about the prospect for some type of reformed marijuana laws in Wisconsin?
Yeah, I will tell you that there's actually an excellent program on, I think it was CNBC that I was listening to over the weekend, that just talked about this, use some of the states like Colorado, I think Oregon, California, Nevada, some of the others that are experimenting, if you will, with recreational marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
There is a company that is, as we try to have laws catch up with technology, catch up with laws, a company trying to come out with a breathalyzer, if you will, that the law enforcement could give someone to see if they were at that moment somehow impaired or intoxicated.
Under the influence.
Correct. Correct. And they don't have that right now. So it's kind of a dilemma for law enforcement. But I will tell you on where are we at with recreational marijuana, it's not happening right now. And I tell everybody that, and some people are very happy with that, some are not. If you talk to law enforcement, they absolutely do not want to see this. Here's what I would tell people, whether you support it or you don't. We have an excellent opportunity here. Federalism, the way our country was founded, we've got a federal government, a centralized government that's supposed to be hands-off in 50 individual states. And of those 50 states, you have a handful that have adopted recreational marijuana. So does it actually bring in tax dollars or doesn't it? Is it a positive or negative to employment? All of the questions that we have, does it lead to higher crime and different kinds of crime or different kinds of drug use? All of those questions, which are very real and I think very reasonable questions, if we want to answer those, this is what I'm telling people, wait till 2025. Let's look at a 10-year study coming out of Colorado that answers all of these questions in these other states. And then at that point, we'll be able to learn from them in this great American experiment. Let's learn from the other states. And if it really is as positive as everyone's saying, then that's something we could look at doing.
I understand and respect that desire to be cautious, to use the best information we have about what is happening in these other states before we take the plunge ourselves. Do you think there is a possibility we would be missing out on the economic opportunity that comes in things like food processing for edibles? This industry has a whole lot of components to it beyond just the grown plant. Is it possible that by waiting, we may lose our opportunity to gain a foothold in the economy that emerges around this industry?
Nothing prevents Wisconsin companies right now from developing manufacturing processes or equipment or anything that could be used in that process. The only thing you can't do, of course, is grow it here and and sell it.
Right.
But with the exception of that, in the whole, in trying the economics of it, short of selling it, nothing would prohibit Wisconsinites from, young entrepreneurs
Sure.
from having a great idea and bringing that forward.
Yeah, I've had more than one young entrepreneur ask me about how they would position themselves to prepare for that sort of economy. And given the strengths we have in agriculture, food processing, manufacturing, logistics, these are all the basic components of that industry. So I'm hopeful that we'll get to it a little bit earlier than 2025, but I definitely respect where you're coming from there, Senator, in looking to learn what we can from those states who are ahead of us on this curve. Okay, I want to get back to transportation for a second, because given that we've got a lot of projects in process, not just here with like the 10-441 interchange construction that's happening, lots of projects in process in southeast Wisconsin, projects all over the state. How does this disagreement about borrowing impact the timelines for projects that are currently underway? Is it possible that these projects will see their timelines extended for lack of immediately available funds, depending on how much borrowing you all agree to?
Well, nothing right now in our budget process is going to put any of the projects in our area in jeopardy. So we pass a budget in the next 2, 3, 4 weeks. We are fine as far as when the DOT knows the money they have to let the projects later this year so that the construction can begin in the following year. So everything that's happening right now, that money has already been let last year. So those projects are going to still continue on. If we don't come to agreement between the houses that sustainably funds our transportation, it could put some of those projects in jeopardy. If you look at what we've identified here in our $712 million in most of that revenue-supported bonding, if you look at that, the 441 interchange and the other projects we have, in fact, included in there is a 12% increase general transportation aids for local municipalities. They are the ones, mind you, that take care of 90% of the roads in our state. So we always think of transportation as highways. Most of that money is spent and maintained by the local units of government. We give a much needed increase for them there. But as long as we're able to get this done in a timely manner, there won't be any delays to those projects. But that's another point, this concept come up by the Assembly here. That's another reason why it's important for them to give us a fully flushed document so that we know. I have no idea if the way they got to their number was to delay a project. Right. I have no idea, and we won't know that unless Fiscal Bureau is able to put their numbers to paper.
Interesting. So yeah, the getting the numbers on paper in a way that you can make comparisons is an important, immediate next step to be able to say, okay, how did you get that number? Can we agree to those steps? Because there's a lot of moving pieces here. Now, let's talk just for a second about funding that is not for the kind of infrastructure we drive on, but instead the kind we might walk or ride our bike on. The Loop the Little Lake project is part of this Trestle Trail expansion in the Neenah-Menasha area. Was there state funding that was made available for that project?
There was. That didn't come from the DOT. That came from the DNR. There's a stewardship grant program. Specifically, it has a couple of $1 million, and I think $4 million in it. And it's supposed to fund infrastructure exactly like the Loop of the Lake, actually. Build trails in certain areas that would add and enhance recreational activities. And Representative Rohrcast and myself worked very hard with both mayors from Neenah and Menasha, mind you, to make sure that we could bring that project to life. That is a beautiful project. If your listeners don't know, that construction should be starting later this year, completing the following year. But you're actually going to be able to loop the lake in 3 trestle bridges and other things. It'll be a beautiful, beautiful area for that.
It's going to be fantastic. We've talked with Amy Barker from Future Neenah a few times about that, and being a 5K length route, just perfect for run walks and those kind of things over the water. Such a unique asset coming, and glad that you and Representative Rohrcast were able to bring some state dollars into the area for that.
Josh, thank you. Can I just jump in here for a second?
Please.
First, I wish you would have told me before that you're going to be covering this on Facebook Live. I would have dressed better, but I appreciate that for everyone. That's great for everyone who's able to.
If you're not watching video, he is in a suit already. So yes, we're available live streaming on WHBY.com and on our Facebook page.
But I also just to talk with this concept from the Assembly. So their next that they brought forward, scrapping the tax cuts.
Right.
I don't want us to get through this without just laying out where the Senate is in this whole process. We did caucus on that late last week after it broke. Since we didn't have the numbers, it was hard really to come to a formal understanding. But there are a number of senators who believe, quite honestly, that this budget, even though it doesn't raise taxes 1 penny, there are a number of people who believe that this budget spends too much money. And the tax cuts, the $200 million in tax cuts for them was a saving grace in this budget process. So the idea, I think, that you're going to be able to eliminate all of the tax cuts would be a hard thing for the Senate caucus, particularly for a few members in southeast Wisconsin, to get through. So as I see us moving forward, removing that entirely I don't think is an option. But looking forward to kind of just seeing how we can work those numbers and make something work.
Yeah, well, and that's where we're at right now. We're at compromise point, right? So Senate comes out with their fully fleshed out plan. You've got a certain number, looking for the Assembly to come out with their fully fleshed out plan. They'll have their number. Theoretically, we're going to end up somewhere in the middle there, theoretically. The governor's position will have a lot to do with that as the one who has to finally actually sign this budget. But that's a good point, is eliminating some of those tax cuts could certainly shift the basis of support in the Senate when you get to that point. So all of these moving parts, as you said, a very small amount yet to be resolved in the budget, but there's some big disagreements over some of those little things that are in there. We've got Lyle on the line. Lyle's got a question here. Lyle, what's on your mind this morning?
I'm curious as to why the state of Wisconsin has to fund the Milwaukee Bucks, and when they could take that money and put it into the highway fund and make better use of it that way.
Yeah, great question, Lyle. Roger Roth, state senator here. What do you think about that? How does that all fit together? Where is that money for the Bucks coming from? Could that otherwise be directed to transportation?
The state of Wisconsin has more money in our coffers because we were able to ink out a deal to keep the Milwaukee Bucks here than if we would have let them leave. Now, the numbers have changed somewhat, but going back for the couple of years when we had voted on that, the amount of money that the bonding cost the state of Wisconsin, we helped them with the bonding aspect of that. It cost us about $4 million a year. The revenue at the time that we took in from the Bucks, that's through income and sales taxes generated from them being here, was almost $8 million. And I understand that number has actually increased, and I imagine it would as contracts and so forth continue to go up. So we actually have $4 to $5 million more dollars at play to spend here in Wisconsin because we were able to keep the Milwaukee Bucks here. It was an important thing to do to make sure that we kept an organization like that in Milwaukee, because now, we all live in Appleton, Needham, and Asha here. We're probably as far, I guess, almost as far away as you can get from Milwaukee. But the success of Milwaukee is directly proportional for the state of Wisconsin. Their success is our success. And we have to do everything we can to help them succeed. And keeping the Bucks here, I think, was an important part of that. If you look at the redevelopment that they're doing down there, it is an absolutely amazing thing that never would have happened. But the state of Wisconsin, at the end of the day, to Lyle, the state of Wisconsin is taking in more money now because we were able to ink out a deal that was responsible to the taxpayers of our state.
Important consideration, again, all the moving pieces that go. Just because one thing is spending doesn't mean that's the only part of the deal. There's revenue that comes in other places. Well, speaking of the success of southeast Wisconsin and how that connects to the rest of the state, there's been a lot of talk in the media, not necessarily in this area, but in other parts of the state, about a potential big new employer that's coming to that area, possibly. Foxconn is the name of this manufacturer based in Taiwan. Rumors abound right now that they are considering locating up to 10,000 new jobs in southeast Wisconsin, but it's going to take an incentive package, of course. Tell us what you know about that and how that plays into these negotiations around the state budget.
Well, let me start by saying any legislator who tells you that they know what's happening with this negotiation process is lying to you. That being said, Josh, why don't you let me tell you what I know about this process? I think there are about 3 or 4 people, honest to God, in the administration who know what's happening behind the scenes. No legislature.
And that's
does it.
typical at this stage
Absolutely.
of a negotiation.
Absolutely.
That's exactly what you'd expect.
But here's just kind of guessing where things might be headed.
What you happen to know.
Yeah, what I would say is that I'm all in favor of whatever the governor is doing right now and working with Foxconn. I think that's important. Let's work to see what tools we have in our tool chest to be able to help bring a company like that here. I think we all could understand how 10,000 jobs, what kind of a boon that could be for our economy. That being said, there has been talk by some of wrapping whatever they're coming up with Foxconn into this budget. And I will tell you, Josh, as I'm sitting here and looking you in the eye, I am diametrically opposed to doing that. Something like this needs Republican and Democrat votes. This is too big, and the investment it's going to bring to Southeast Wisconsin, to both Republican and Democrat districts, I want to make sure in working for now that is outside of the budget, just like the Bucks Arena was. We work to get that outside the budget so that Republican and Democrats can come together and put together something that's in the best interest of our state. But I will tell you, Wisconsin is very attractive to employers. Honest to God, I don't think we need to give Foxconn anything, because right now we've got a great, our tax climate is getting better. Our property taxes are great. We are funding infrastructure, including in the Senate proposal here, the 94 north-south, so the transportation is going to be great. I think Wisconsin has the ability to stand on its own.
Yeah, well, and we know that life here is wonderful, so we've got that going for us.
That's right.
As natives, we know
That's
that.
right.
We're talking with State Senator Roger Roth. One more segment with him where I've got a bit of a lightning round in store of some different topics. If you've got topics you want to include in that round, email me right now, freshtake1150@gmail.com. We are still streaming live video on WHBY.com and on Facebook, so you can check us out there. And we'll have one more segment with State Senator Roger Roth right after this on Fresh Take. You're listening to WHBY. Welcome back to Fresh Take. I'm your host, Josh Duclo. We've got State Senator Roger Roth with us in studio today. We were talking state budget, but I've got a couple other issues here that I want to get through in the few minutes that we have left, Senator Roth. And it starts with a question I got from a listener who wants to know about the notion of local control. The Republican Party has long talked about restoring power to the local level. You were talking about the experiment in democracy going on around the changing nature of marijuana regulation in this country. But oftentimes it seems, at least, and to this writer specifically, that actions in Madison are restricting the power of local governments instead of enhancing the power of local governments, particularly in the case of using funding referendums. So what do you have to say about the desire of Madison to restrict the control that local governments have over funding by requiring referenda or limiting their use of referenda?
And are you referring to school referendums here?
Schools, I know there's talk about referendums for roundabouts, some other things that have come up, just that balance of state versus local control.
Yeah, it's an important one. And I will tell you, as I use at my town hall, as I say, legislators, Madison, we are 100% local control, except for when we're not.
Yeah,
and
there seems to be that balance is shifting.
Sure, there's just to give you one that is kind of a perennial issue, and that deals with siting issues for, in fact, here in Appleton. I think you and I talked about that.
Yes, we have.
Months ago, with cell towers, with windmills, with all these things. And so there's always the debate is always weighing the interests of the locals for the broader good of the community. So it's weighing the interest of the property owner who has to look at the cell tower or the windmill with the rest of the community that benefits from the safety and security of having that there. And when, I guess the quick way to answer that question is just to say that it is in the back of the minds of legislators, I think, Republican and Democrat, wanting to trust locals, but there do come times when the greater good for society requires, I think, that the state steps in and sets certain parameters. And that obviously, if you are someone who's going to be living by a highway or a prison or a cell tower, that probably doesn't sit well with you.
Yeah. Last thing I want to get to here, and we're quickly running out of time, but I went to your town hall meeting that was at Shattuck Park in Neenah. You got a lot of questions, or at least a couple of questions that I saw about the redistricting maps, and that they will be reviewed by the Supreme Court in the fall. The whole court case is built on this new theory of voter efficiency, that any vote over and above the vote needed to win is a wasted vote. Can you just give us your take on that voter efficiency theory and what you think is going to happen with the maps in Wisconsin?
I think this efficiency argument is a load of garbage, to be totally honest with you. You had these maps, and I wasn't around when they passed them, but they were brought to court twice. They were challenged in court twice, and twice they were found to be constitutional. You found a judge who believed this new argument that had never been even used before in this efficiency gap, which really flies in the face of people having the ability to think on their own. The efficiency gap, the basic tenet of it is if you're a Democrat, you're going to vote Democrat straight party ticket. It doesn't take into account that people can change their attitudes and opinions between election cycles, yes, but even between candidates who are running versus, from president to Senate all the way down the ticket. So you had a Democrat-leaning core, 2 Obama appointees, 1 Bush. I hate to say that things are getting political, but they are. And they found something, and it's going to go to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court's going to decide once and for all if the maps are constitutional. They're going to decide if our process is, in fact, constitutional. So I look forward to that. I welcome that.
All right, that review coming in the fall from the Supreme Court of the United States, and we'll keep our eye on that as well. That does it for our time today with State Senator Roger Roth. Senator Roth, thank you so much for being so candid about where things stand with the budget. We'll continue to watch as negotiations go forward, and come back again and bring us an update when you can.
Thank you. Look forward to it.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Thanks to you for being with us as well. That'll do it for us today. We'll be back with more Fresh Take tomorrow. I hope you'll join us there. If you missed the video, you can find it banked at our Facebook page or on WHBY.com. Share that with some friends if you think they'd be interested in what you heard today, and you can always find the podcast there as well. Don't go away. The Good Neighbor is coming up next. That does it for me today. It's WHBY.